way to sustain. And this is exactly how I see the situation of COVID-19. So, to start with the communication or reframe communication, like Jaya ma'am rightly said, in this 21st century, communication is of immense importance, which I did observe during my career in a global consultancy firm. So, interacting with different sects of people across the globe, I realized that there is something, you know, uh, we day in and day out, even though we talk with different kinds of people, there is an element of communication which we tend to ignore. And that particular element has a very, very, very big impact on our life. So just to set the stage on communication, the process of communication, I'll keep it a little short because it's a very common thing, and most of you might be even aware. I will not go into much technicalities of it, but you have a source of message which goes in to the receiver through a channel. So that channel might be anything, verbal, written, whatever you might consider that channel of communication. The important thing here is the reach and relevance of message, which goes from the source or to the receiver. Now, if I tell you that the thought about the meaning of communication here will be different to each and everyone who is attending this session and people who are not attending this session, everyone, each and every individual in this world. But to bring a common consensus, the meaning of a communication to a receiver, a person who is receiving the message, is the response it elicits. So when a person is receiving a message, the kind of response it elicits from that particular receiver, regardless of the intention of the communicator. So whatever I might be communicating with my intention to you, but if that communication does not bring about a response which I was intending to get out of you, then that communication is a failure to me. And that is the main reason for a conflict situation which we see, in a day-to-day life. So here, just to understand a little bit on this, I would like to quote a small story. So in a medieval castle, it was under a siege by the troops. So people in the castle, they were falling short of food supplies, and they were not able to come to a conclusion as to what they would do. So they decided that in order to show their defiance to the troop who were outside the castle, they started catapulting the foods from the castle to the troops outside. And the troops who were outside the castle took it as a taunt to them that the people within the castle has so much of resources, and it somehow led to demotivate the troops who were outside the castle, and they left the siege and they went away. So this is just one classic example of the meaning of communication, which is different to the sender and the receiver. Now, in today's time, whenever we communicate, we give so much importance to the way we communicate, the words. But, a study shows that the words we use, it's just 7% of the communication. So that's the verbal communication. But rest, everything is the non-verbal communication, which in today's time we tend to ignore. So I would, like to take a pause here and just, ask a question to each and everyone present here, that how many of you agree that the conflict situation or a message that goes out to each and every individual is forming part of your verbal communication? Non-verbal communication is just a minuscule part of it. How many of people in here believe that? I can wait for 15 seconds for people to give their opinion. because it's just kind of a very important thing here.
So may I request you to repeat the question? What I understood is that you are asking us if we believe that the messaging is a kind of verbal communication, right?
So no, what I meant to ask is, if there is a communication, the communication falls in two categories. I mean, I would divide it as verbal communication and non-verbal communication.
Right.
So how many of us do believe that in today's time, whatever we communicate, 90 to 95% forms part of the verbal communication and not the non-verbal thing. So okay. So just to explain, non-verbal would comprises of your body language, your facial expression, your gestures, your postures, your tone. So what is the general consensus, if I may ask Amit sir or Jaya ma'am, whosoever is looking at the main responses?
So what I
Sir,
can see is, first of all, two, three people have only answered. I feel that non-verbal constitutes more than 90% of our communication. And Dr. Mihir Parekh said it's more non-verbal than verbal, which is what I also mean. Then I also wrote that written communication obviously is verbal communication because there you can't see the person and the body language or anything else being perceived. Then Mr. Amit Sharma has written A and B both. Miss Shella says 90% is too much for verbal. So she also says that non-verbal constitutes more than 5 to 10. Gunjan Min, ma'am says 90%. I agree. Miss Lalita says non-verbal is important. So mostly what I see is people are saying non-verbal is important. People are saying it's a mix of both. And yes, what
Yeah.
we
So I agree with most of the people. Although verbal communication is important, but in any kind of communication, non-verbal communication forms a majority part of it. And consciously or unconsciously, we tend to you know just overlook that part of the communication which is of immense importance. And I'll come to why it is important in a later part of this session. Just for our communication thing, we use language. Each and every one of us do use language to an extent. Now that language solves two purpose for us to communicate. One, it represents our experience from the outside world, whatever experience we have gathered, in the sense reasoning, thinking, fantasizing, rehearsing. So it kind of builds a map of experience within us. Now, to communicate that experience, that model of representation, what we have developed within us, we use language. And for that language, the mode we use is we talk, we discuss, we write, we give lectures, we do singing, such sort of things. So, words, what we create are such important that we don't even realize that it kinds of leaves such a sharp impact on the brain. One, words are not only which represents or reflect or shape our experience, but frequently they frame our mental experience. I would say, or rather I would put it in a way that spoken words are a symbol of mental experience and written words are symbol of spoken words. So, just to give you an example of how important the words are, uh, I believe people present here might be aware with the connectors. So there are connectors like and, but, which connects two sentences. So just I'm giving you one sentence, just try and connect it with and but, and see what impact does it create on you. So supposingly if I say that I want to reach my outcome is one sentence, and I have a problem is another sentence. So if we connect these two sentences by using a connector, let's say use first use and connect these two sentences, see what impact you get, then use but and connect these two sentences and see what impact you get. So anyone here would, would want to share their experience about what they are feeling after, getting this sentences joined by these two connectors. If you want to repeat, what sentences I just said is, I want to reach my outcome dash, I have a problem. So anyone would like to share their experience, or do you want me to share, what impact does it create on us?
Sir, may I speak?
Yeah, sure.
So when we say I want to reach my outcome and I have a problem, it shows that I'm aware that there is a problem and I am not deterred by it. I'm not taking it as a negative thing. I am just realizing that there is a problem. So I might even think of a solution. But when I say I want to reach my outcome, but I have a problem, here there is a negativity in my mind somewhere.
You are very close, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
As any other person would like to share anything? Okay, so if you just observe the emphasis of the connectors, let's say first we use and, right? Is Sir, can you mute? I'm getting an echo here. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Muted.
Okay. So if you first use the connector and connect the sentences, say I want to reach my outcome and I have a problem. With the connector and, both the sentences which comes before and the sentence which comes after and gets highlighted. So the discounting of none of the sentences happens with the connector and. When we use the connector but, what comes before that connector, it highlights that. So if you say I want to reach my outcome but I have a problem, so it's kind of a negative experience. It is kind of dismissing your positive experience and portraying the negative outcome. So here, some people who have a habitual pattern in which they are constantly dismissing the positive side of their experience with the word but. And now if you replace the word but with the word although, you will see a significant difference. Like, I want to reach my outcome although I have a problem. So with the word although, what comes before it gets highlighted. So it focuses on the positive aspect of the outcome and diminishes the negative aspect. So this is just 2 or 3 examples on words that what an impact these kind of words create on each and every individual. Although we use English language to a very great extent, we've learned this through grammars, but the emphasis of the connectors, the usage of it, and the impact it creates on the brain, it is such immense that it leaves an imprint through our life. So even when we are dealing with kids, or probably when they or we can guide the kid that whenever they are, portraying their opinion, ideas, views, when they are writing essays, using this kind of connectors, the emphasis which it places is something which we have to, look, understand, and teach them, because this is going to frame the thought process for those kinds of connectors in our minds. So moving forward from the connectors, language also has, like, whatever we are communicating is just the surface structure of that language, organization of words. There's a deeper structure other than the surface structure, which has an underlining meaning to it, which is assigned to it, which we normally don't communicate, or rather through our ways of communication, it does not come out properly, because each and every human being has a tendency of either deleting some information, distorting some information, and creating a generalization of some information. So the real underlining meaning of the language, what we want to present, or what we want to communicate, or what we want to express, sometimes does not clearly come out. So it is very important in such a scenario to avoid miscommunication. Always ask open-ended questions. Never put a question in such a frame that you get a yes or a no answer. Although they are subjective, when you want to get certain information out, always use open-ended questions. Also with kids, it will even help you to understand the thought process of that particular kid. Even for that kid, it will be a very creative thinking. It will develop that creative thinking in them. Obviously, just giving a straight answer or a straight question, which is a polarization, either answer to which is either a yes or a no, that just creates a barrier. That's a full stop to the thinking for that particular kid. So that is one of my suggestions, that whenever we are interacting with the kids, they are in a stage where their thinking pattern is developing. Let's give them a chance to express their views. They might be right, they might be wrong. And remember one thing, all kinds of thought, behavior, everything has a positive intention behind that action or reaction. What we tend to ignore is the positive intention behind that, and just see the behavior or the actions. So, the better part is to let the kids express. So, it is such an important thing of communication that open-ended question will resolve to a larger extent the conflict situations which might even surface in a communication. Now, take a scenario in a communication, where I just want to express something to you. Now that my expression of something to you might not even show the emotions of me, or it might not show the emotion of the other person which I am taking into consideration, which is again resulting into a conflict. So if I say that in every kind of miscommunication or a conflict, there is a characteristic traits of every human being. So there are three elements in that. One is the communication, one is the emotion of self, and the third is the emotion of the other person. So when there is a communication, and emotion of self, the general characteristic trait is of a blamer. So person who keeps on blaming everyone is not considering the emotion of the other person. And blamers always tend to find fault in everyone's communication. They wait to see where you go wrong. When there is a communication and the emotion of other is taken into consideration with the emotion of self is negated, that person becomes a placater. So he does not mean, or he does not take his emotions into consideration, which again leads to a conflict kind of a situation. There is another characteristic trait of a person in a communication, which is a distractor. So he negates all the three. He negates the communication, he negates self-emotion, he negates the emotion of the other person also. And there is a very profound characteristic trait in this kind of communication is the person we call a leveler. So leveler is a person who communicates, who takes his feeling into consideration as well as the feeling of the other person also into consideration. So when we are dealing with children, I am sure, and I have seen all the teachers, they play the role of leveler here, because if they just don't take kids' emotions into consideration, that's a big sabotage which is going to happen. And I have seen people where they just don't care. I mean, I'm sorry to say here at this platform, but certain parents just feel, treat, and communicate like a blamer. They don't consider their child's emotion. They don't consider what are the emotions of the teachers. So I would like to stress here that when we are building up the characters of children, leveler is something which we all should try to do. Now coming to one very interesting thing which I have learned is that any kind of learning, any kind of effective learning in a communication or in a classroom or anywhere are all rooted in our sensory experience. So we gather information from 5 different senses. In that, 3 dominant senses we use on a regular, frequently, day in and out to gather information. This visual, auditory, and kinesthetic are the 3 important senses through which we gather information, which forms part of our mental map, and we kind of present it to the world using this 3 representational system. Now, why would I stress on representational system as a very important aspect in learning? So representational systems just gathers everything, all the information from the atmosphere. It absorbs, it goes into our brain, it forms the mental map, it creates an image there. So a kid, when he is learning, so every human being are at one point in time use one dominant representational system. So at this point in time, I might be using visual representational system as my dominant system to present this particular talk. Somebody might be using kinesthetic. So they might be feeling what I am currently saying, whether that makes sense to them. Certain people might be just listening, so they get the impact what other person is communicating through just listening things. So when a curriculum in a school is designed, I'm sure at when I learned, or when some of us at who are of my age learned in a school, this kind of representational system was something which we were only aware that those are five senses, but the way it plays in our life is something which is kind of very, very important, because whenever a visual kid comes in a conversation with a person who is kinesthetic, they both will, there will be a conflict in that kind of a situation. So if I take a classroom example, which is a very right in this particular scenario where a teacher and a kid is communicating. So in this particular scenario, if I if I quote some 3 or 4 sentences here, you will just get an idea. So where a child who is having a trouble with spelling is talking with his teacher. So the student is saying, I just don't really feel excited about learning to spell. Teacher tells to the student, well, I think if we just take a closer look at your problem, you will see that it is not so difficult to learn these words. The student says, it's not something that I can really get in touch with. Teacher says, you are not trying hard enough. Just look at them a little more carefully. Student says, I can't seem to get a feel of it. So what is happening here is teacher is talking from her visual representational system, and student is talking with the kinesthetic representational system. So they are unable to come to a common platform. The thing important here for teachers to look at it is that in a day-to-day classroom with 25 to 30 kids, each and every kid would have a different representational system of communication. So, to identify the dominant representational system of a kid with which, they are comfortable in studying, which they are comfortable in, they would use that dominant representational system in order to grasp the information more accurately. That if it is nailed, that kid will obviously feel the difference in learning. His capability will rise to a level which he himself would be surprised as to the change it has brought, within him. Also, the teachers will have to do, kind of very minimal effort to make kids learn this. I am not saying that this is a very easy method to develop. Identifying each and every kid with a different dominant representational system would take a time, but it is not impossible though. There are ways, methods through which we can identify the dominant learning styles of the students. And if that representational system is followed, I have seen changes in kids who couldn't even, learn spellings. With just change of representational system, they were able to remember the spelling, numbers, telephone numbers in just 2 or 3 minutes at just just cutting short the margin of the time which they used to spend earlier. So there are ways in which we can find out about, which kid is visual, which kid is kinesthetic, and which kid is auditory. So there are different words which people often use. There are different, tones which people often use. So there is a very deep study in order to identify these things. But currently, what schools can adopt is they can use some modes or some techniques which caters to all these three representational systems. So for a visual, an auditory, a kinesthetic, some illustrations, videos, pictures, walk meetings, role playings, hands-on activities, you know, giving them oral presentations, one-on-one conversations. So this some of these kind of activities will cater to all the representational systems of different kids. Now, I'm just taking a 15 seconds break here just to hear from you guys that have you ever thought about this representational system, how important it is, or what do you feel about it?
So I'll take this first chance and save time because nobody has taken up. So am I audible to you, sir?
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to know that first of all, the learning styles are different, and hence teacher can be mindful while delivering and planning the lessons, so that the children of all different styles are engaged and they all can perceive what you're trying to convey. The communication then becomes fruitful, because an auditory
Correct.
learner would lose interest when it is only kinesthetic, or a kinesthetic learner would lose interest if your lesson is only catering to auditory learners or visual learners. So it's very important to understand these systems and also to know each and every child. And as you said, it's not easy, but I would also say it's very rewarding. And this is what we are here for. So we should try and keep trying to understand every learner and the way the child learns. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Anyone else would like to share what do they feel about this?
Yeah, I would like to say. Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead. I can hear you.
Yeah, see, I have two kids. I think you might be knowing Shonaya, and the other one is Man. So, my daughter is an auditory child, well as my son is a kinesthetic child. So, for her, everything, whatever I say, she follows it. And for my son, I have to do everything in a playful way so that he'll listen to it. So I can see the difference in both of them. And definitely if I understand it, so I think if I understand it properly, then I'll able to handle both of them.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. What actually, when I started observing each and every kid on the basis of representational system, what actually struck me was that in 90% of the cases in schools or at house, if people are not aware that every individual has a different representational system which is dominant at some particular part, at some particular activity, the conflict happens to such an extent that you would have seen that some parents are, अरे यार ये तो मेरा बच्चा पागल है, उसको कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है, वो पढ़ नहीं रहा है, वो उसके साथ मुझे क्या करना है मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा है. So this kind of frustration comes into parent, that the kid is behaving in a different manner, but there is a science behind it, that why that kid is behaving in a different manner, and we all need to understand that. Even in school, there are different some kids are very intelligent as they are tagged, but if you frankly ask me, I wouldn't tag any kid as intelligent or a fast learner. So there are different learning styles. So this representation system see, the way the teacher teaches, or rather, I would say the way the course is conducted in India for people to grasp knowledge, it is kind of a very monotonous way where, I'm not talking about the international board at this point in time, but the other boards, it's kind of a very monotonous. So, just teacher is there who is teaching, and kids are just listening and gathering information. In our kind of a board, yes, sometimes, every time, most of the times, we are using representational systems, which, I am not sure about the other schools, but at least I would vouch for Ram Ratna International School, that knowingly, unknowingly, there are certain activities, there are certain course which are designed in such a manner that, it just caters to this representational systems. Some way or the other, kids are, taking benefit out of it. What I would want to suggest here is that a judicious attempt to learn how the representational systems work and how each and every kid, so, if we want to identify each and every kid in a classroom with our school, the strength, it won't take much time. So there's kind of a simple stage exercises which we can conduct with kids. So there are different kinds of words, there are different kinds of idioms, there's different kinds of essays which we can make kids do, and through which we can even come to know what representational systems they are using. There are certain sets of questions which we can ask. So there is entire set of tools which is available, wherein we can come to know that which is the dominant system of the learner, and that will even help the learners to grasp and learn things very quickly and very efficiently. So even when I talk about the feedback system, so if a visual person in this manner, in this representational system, is giving a feedback to a kinesthetic person, you can just imagine what kind of sabotage is going to happen, because they will not be able to connect they will not be able to come at any one consensus at any given point of time. So, again, I would stress that representational systems are the base of each and every learning which an individual on this earth is doing. Whether you consciously know it or you unconsciously do it, but that is the key to it. Now, moving ahead to logical levels of change. So these logical levels of change are basically neurological levels of change. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a mental map which gets built up, in our head. Now it has 6 layers to it. The one, it goes from more concrete level to a more abstract level. As it goes up, it becomes more immense and more important. So the base, what we have or what we call is the environment in which we all are there. So currently, if I say in this particular webinar, I am sitting in this constrained environment and giving some kind of information on communication. Now, giving information on this platform is a constrained environment in which I am operating. So above the environment, there's a behavior. So in this environment, when I'm giving this particular, talk about communication, so there's kind of a particular behavior which is happening. It's kind of action. Above behavior, there are certain capabilities. So whatever we are doing, currently behaving in this particular environment, is because of some kind of capabilities, some kind of knowledge, skill, competency which I have, of that skill competency, I am doing or behaving, and through my behavior, I'm giving that information in the environment. Above capability level, these two levels, just I'm stressing that above capability, there are two levels which are of utmost importance, which is beliefs and values. So this level of beliefs and values is the level of motivation and permission. So it creates a kind of a box in which the entire capability, behavior, environment encompasses. Above the level of beliefs and values, it's the identity level. So this identity level is how you think of yourself. Now this identity level, it's kind of a container. That identity level is kind of a container which contains your beliefs and values, your capabilities, your behavior, and your environment. Now just consider a scenario where you are scolding a child. Now if you tell that child that you are good for nothing, you don't deserve this, you don't know how to behave, what you are doing at that point in time? What you are doing at that point in time, you are attacking directly on his identity. And when there is a direct attack on the identity, everything below the identity goes crumbling down. So it's like a Titanic ship. When you are trying to help sink the Titanic ship, and at that point you are arranging the chairs in the ship, is like, you are sabotaging the entire thing. You have already sabotaged the identity of that child, his core beliefs and values, entire his capability, his behavior, and his environment for him is going to crumble down. What we generally tend to do here is 95% of the cases which I have come across, which I have seen in my life, in school, in my organization, at home, is that people directly start tagging and directly start attacking at the identity level. And once the case, drops down, people start finding ways to mend it at the level of behavior. But just understand one thing: when you have just erased, when you have just sabotaged the identity level, see, it's kind of an entire mental map which it encompasses. So identity gone, your entire map is gone. So I'll give you one classic example here. Examples are something which would make a really good sense to everyone. See, there was a person who was admitted in a psychiatric hospital for treatment. He was under the delusion of Jesus Christ. So he believed himself that he was a Jesus Christ. He used to wander around the ward just like that, giving sermons to everyone, whether person listens or they don't give a heed to them. But he used to just wander around the ward like a Jesus Christ. So doctors tried umpteen number of attempts to get him out of his delusion, but they were unsuccessful. One fine day, there was another doctor who came and joined the hospital, and he just studied this case. And what he did is, he went to that guy and told him that I believe that you have the knowledge of the carpenter, and I require your help to help us. We are doing some new refurbishment of the wards, so I would require your help here. So that guy agreed, and he went and started doing the carpentry work. He trained other people, and he got engrossed so much in that work that he forgot that he himself believed that he was a Jesus Christ. He started meeting people. He became a social animal, and he got treated, and he was discharged from the hospital, and he led a very normal life. So the point to quote this example here is that when there is a shift in the identity, rather than attacking, you just shift the identity of that person, everything shifts. There becomes an immense shift in that person. So everything, his beliefs and values, his capabilities, his behavior, his environment, everything changes. So I would, want to take a pause here and give a time to reflect to each and every teacher who are here to just think of a case where they have, at a given point of time, they have, just attacked the identity of a kid. I don't want to share it here, but just become aware where a person has been attacked at the identity or the belief and values level. Because, that is the utmost damage which you would want to do in a kid. My suggestion here would be that whichever case might be, whatever you want to give feedback, whatever you want to tell, do it at the level of the behavior and the environment. It will give that person a chance to improve his actions and behaviors, which will further go a level up rather than attacking at the up level, which will impact the entire chain down. I would recommend to do whatever changes you want to do at the behavior level or the capabilities level. Even for the feedback thing, it is so very important, not only in school, in personal life, in professional life. Never ever give feedback at the identity or belief and values level. Always give feedback at the behavior level. There are, resources which a person can come out of or can use in order to, shift his entire capabilities, his beliefs and values, and his identity on the feedback which is given at the behavior level. So, in feedback also, what I have seen and noticed, that people often, tend to give or tend to criticize. Criticism has become a kind of trend, I would say, in giving feedbacks. Actually, criticisms are seemingly negative focus the most of the time. People who criticize negatively, I would term them as, I would term them as spoilers, because they obviously operate from a problem frame. Everything they see is a problem. But at the same time, it is the positive intention of the person who is giving the feedback in a criticizing manner in order to see that, the other person does not fall off, or the other person does not come out of the output or the kind of thing which is required from that person. But there are ways, there are different kinds of, I would say different kinds of ways in which the criticism feedback is also given. Now, supposingly, let's take an example here, that if I say, if a person is criticizing something, he's giving a feedback in a very critical manner. He says that, this proposal is too expensive. Now, when you are giving such kind of feedback, you have left no room for the other person to even think or justify something. This kind of feedback is a polarization and it leads to conflict. The answer which you can give to this kind of feedback is either in a yes or a no. But consider that in order to, just change the statement of from this proposal is too expensive, we go and say that how are we going to afford this? There, it opens the idea of the other person. So he will start revealing his plan. He will start giving you a concrete and tangible examples of what he's thinking of and what he's doing. So the important point here is, again, as I stressed earlier, to ask open-ended questions and to mind it, always use questions starting how, because those are meaningful questions. It will give you certain very good in-depth. If you start asking why, what, such kind of questions, those questions are like, they often presupposes other person's judgment, which can lead back into conflict or disagreement again. So whenever we are giving feedback, whenever we are talking to someone, whenever there is a fit of anger and we are reacting, just keep in mind that the logical, neurological levels of change never ever touch the identity or the beliefs and value of the opposite person. Even when you are trying to give feedback, I would always recommend to give feedback on a behavioral level or skills or capabilities level. Also, teachers in a classroom, when they are trying to build up a rapport with the kids in the classroom, it is always good to build rapport at the level of beliefs and values and identity. Now, this is the reverse thing, as opposed to feedback. Building rapport on the identity and beliefs and value level is the level of motivation and long-term memory. So that particular kid will remember you for a very, very long time. So whenever at home also you are interacting with your kids, just keep this thing in mind. And I would just like to ask the teachers here that what do they think about the identity and beliefs and values level, and what kind of observation they have seen in the classroom with the kids. Any one or two teachers, if they can recollect any kind of experience, they can share here for the benefit of everyone else.
Sir, this is Amit here. I'll share one of my experiences where I was working on a project for a salon chain, and somehow in the communication, despite my efforts to communicate with clarity, the founder just said, Amit, we have to go crazy on digital. So I didn't quite understand what do we mean by going crazy on digital. So I tried to elicit responses. I asked them that what do you exactly want? I mean, going crazy is a good, nice, vocab word to use to express yourself. But then with communication or where money is involved, where a lot of the high stakes are involved, clarity has to be there. So at the end of it, I was told that, they had a database of their existing customers who had bought their offers, and they just extrapolated the numbers that if we show the ad to 10 million people, we will get the 10% sales and we will run our ways laughing to the bank. So I said it might not work that way, and then somewhere I felt that I deliberately didn't put my foot down. I wanted them to have a first-hand experience of what happens. It turned out to be a great disaster. We showed our ad to 30 million people, and 30 million impressions rather, and we spent 7 lakh rupees and we got a revenue of 10,000 rupees. So, which was a big disaster. So again, communication, and I also did not have an opportunity to communicate in detail before this all started. There was no online payment option for the customer. So at the end of it, it's my classic case example that I use in all my digital marketing training classes. So yes, this has been one area where I felt that communication could have played a very important role.
Yeah, it does actually. We don't tend to realize at certain point in time, but that's it. So I would like to end this session here. I mean, I can carry on with way too many things, but then I need to limit something. So I would like to end the session here. I can take questions if any of you would have.
Friends, please go ahead and ask any questions you may have on this while. Feel free to speak up. It's an open forum that we have. We'd like to have a lot of engagement coming from everybody. Feel free to type it out in the chat box. If you want, you can unmute yourself, turn on the video and ask your questions directly. That's absolutely fine.
So I would just like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank Nirav sir. It has been a really enriching session. We learned a lot. And because I will also be moving out of this talk to attend a workshop, I wanted to acknowledge that you have given such tips which are very crucial for teachers to implement. Hence, it is very effective for teachers to follow this, make a note of it, and try to implement. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the following people for their presence along with their teams: Mr. Hardik Kakkar, the director of the Nivam School, Amravati; Dr. Mihir Parekh, a renowned psychologist; Ms. Lalita Rajgopalan, a member of MISA Executive Committee; Ms. Kalyani Chaudhary, principal of Billabong High, Thane; Ms. Anjana Sahi, principal of Podar International School, Panvel; Ms. Seema Sablok, principal of SM Shetty School, and all the others whom I could not mention. Your presence has added glory and value to the Adharshila talks at RRIS. It was a pleasure to have you all, and we look forward to your continued presence, support, and cooperation at the further RRIS Adharshila talks. So I would also request the participants to share their feedback. And Nirav sir, a big thank you from the entire RRIS family. I'm also acknowledging the presence of RRIS parents. You are the big pillar of support, and you give us the confidence to try new ventures, think of new ideas, and you make it successful. So having parents like Mr. Nirav Mehta speaks for itself. You have been a great example. So let's carry on with the feedbacks. Thank you, Nirav sir, once again.
My
And
pleasure, ma'am.
Thanks to all my colleagues. Thanks, everybody.
So friends, please go ahead and ask any questions that you may have in the chat box. I'll have a quick look if I could see any questions. None so far. If you all want, you can just unmute yourself and ask your questions to Nirav sir. And of course, you all can also share your feedback. How was the session? And if there's anything specific that you'd like to add about Nirav sir and put your perspective to it, please go ahead and share your thoughts, friends.
Hello, Nirav sir. I would like to say something.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, actually,
yes, sir, please introduce yourself so that everybody knows
sir, so I will be a unique participant because I am a mathematics faculty in Billabong International, Thane. And even though, but I'm attending this session and this has been nothing less than enriching. And so I was surprised to know that you are a parent for RIS University. So that is something, that's very, very unique and very, very refreshing to see itself, the parents chipping in. And I would also like to share an experience of mine. So it's about, I believe that the teachers today need to have more of EQ rather than IQ. So EQ being the emotional quotient. See, because what you are saying is as important as how you are conveying to the students. Right. So this can, like you said, make or mar, their psyche at the topmost level, which is the identity level. So I always believe, and I always tell my children ki whether you believe you can do maths or you don't, you are right in either ways. Right. So what I do is I just identify my weak students, and instead of telling them that you can't do it, I just tell them, can't you? So I just reframe my words, and then the results are incredible. And then they take it as a responsibility. They come prepared. I give them lessons, and the next day, once they show up, I just see a spark in them, because see, they already had it in them. It was just a question of whether they are trying hard enough to bring it out. And one of my students who is a sports captain. So I always believe people who are associated with sports, like our PM says, Khelo India, uh, that thing was introduced with the motto that people who are into sports discipline, they can very well do in the education field as well, because all those traits are required in the education as well, the discipline
Correct.
and the fortitude to continue if you're not able to solve something. So it has worked wonders for her, and I'm actually really really happy. I didn't have the the names for all these techniques that I was maybe subconsciously or unknowingly using. Now I see I'm very very clear, and I'll also apply it to my lower grades because I've been given now. So currently I'm teaching A levels and 10th grade itself. So but this has been very very enriching experience, and thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much. And as you mentioned, see, some of us, many of us are doing it unknowingly. We don't know as of now until and unless someone enriches us about what the exact terminology is. But believe
Right.
me, you apply it, it's pure science. I have seen the
Mm.
results. I have worked with different people. I have applied this technique before even sharing with some other people. So I have seen the results, and this is pure science. There is nothing which will go awry if you do this in a right way. So just
Yes, sir.
reframing is the core of it. Don't even allow the negativity to enter your kids by your actions or reactions or verbal things. See, every time if you reframe, it will help even you to change the pattern, and it will help the kids also.
Right,
So
sir.
wonderful, wonderful for your efforts. Really appreciate.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, sir.
Neerav sir, I would like to share something. Namaste everyone. I am Shaila Pandey. I work as a quality control manager in Ramratna International. Now, while you were talking about the different types of intelligence and you were talking about the different types of learning ability, I was
Hmm.
constantly being reminded of the classic fable which most of us are familiar with. That is the Animal School by George Reeves, in which the animals decide that they must do something heroic to meet the problems of the new world, and then they start judging the ability of all the animals by doing the same thing. For example, a rabbit was expected to fly, and a fish was expected to climb a tree. So everyone is unique, and no one is intelligence as such in conventional term. Everyone has got his or her own speciality, and that is how we need to work, and that is, as a teacher, that is what we need to keep in the mind as parents, as teachers, and most importantly as human beings. Before being critical about people, before being judgmental about people, we need to appreciate and more than accept, respect the intelligence, respect the qualities that the person has. I would also like to ask other participants, non-RRIS participants, to share their feedback, to if they have any questions.
Just I would add to what you said, Shela ma'am.
Right, sir.
See, whenever we are talking or talking with the kids or giving some kind of feedback, also, no,
Mm-hmm.
our human nature
Mm-hmm.
is such that we jump on interpretations and evaluations.
Right, right.
I would say just keep it aside. Just give the feedback on a descriptive level. That will
Mm-hmm.
avoid getting into a conflicting situations.
Right, sir. Very true. I would also like to thank Mr. Piyush for his feedback, his interaction. Uh, I would like to invite the
Thank you, ma'am.
non-RRIS participants to share their feedbacks, their questions. The forum is open for all of you.
And I also like to inform participants that if you have questions now, you can ask them now. If you don't have questions now and you realize your questions later, I will be posting the recording of this session on our YouTube channel. We will post your questions there, and we'll be happy to get the answers to you from them. So, it's a digital world. We are all connected. Yes. So, any questions?
Amit sir, your voice is not audible properly.
I think today I lost my Bluetooth headset is not functioning. Okay, I all right now. So friends, what I'm saying is that I will be posting a recording of this session.
Sir,
Amit
yes,
sir,
sir, your voice is not.
it's kind of a robotic voice.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's
I feel like I'm. Yeah.
I'll disconnect and reconnect.
It's still processed, sir.
Okay, so I would again take this opportunity to thank all of you for being present here in this talk. Thank you so much, Mr. Neerav, for your time, for your valuable inputs, and for the amazing talk. Thank you for all the teachers across the country for participating in this talk. I would like to thank all the participants from RRIS, all the parents. A special gratitude and thanks goes to all of you from RRIS, and I, on behalf of RRIS, thank all of you again for being a part of today's talk. And